had problematic thinking all day long. The subconscious always has something to say. This is all the steps of healing. This is backed in neuroscience. You didn't consent to your original programming. We're going to address that same safety issue in a better way, and you know how I feel about that. So let's walk step by step through an example of what it means to be the observer. But this is what we call reparenting. Healing doesn't have to be convoluted. But what does this even mean? I remember being so frustrated with this because you've probably heard that our mind creates our reality. I can't even express how much this has changed my life, but knowing why this happens is equally important. It's hard to just bring ourselves present. It will flag it for you because the brain always looks for evidence that it is accurate. You don't have to keep running the same program on repeat, but those steps will feel more effortless. The more traumatized you are, you actually have more opportunities for, I saw, rapid healing.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Saturn Returns, and my name is Crystal, and here we talk about healing in easy to understand and digest ways. And if you haven't already, check out the last two videos on healing, because before we even get into the meat of the healing, which is today's video, which I'm sure you guys have been waiting for, you really do need to look back at the other two videos, because we need to understand what is healing, what it will and will not do for us, and what it looks like. That way we don't get discouraged. So today we're going to be talking about the observer, and I'm sure you've heard about this topic in many places. It's in Buddhist techniques, mindfulness, things like that. But what does this even mean? I remember being so frustrated with this because I'm a very analytical person, and it seemed like they were telling me, don't think, you can't think your way into healing, and you know how I feel about that in my last video. It doesn't mean that you don't think, it just means that you think about how you are thinking, okay? So you don't take it at face value and allow it to be truth and absolute. You don't extrapolate meaning about it to your life, and we'll get more into that later. It's that you observe it. You look at it. Some people like to look at it as if they are looking at someone else from outside of a window so that they can observe it objectively. But you do this so that you can decide, do I still want to subscribe to this belief? Do I need to feel that way? You still feel your feelings, and we'll get into that next week. Okay. But we can observe and decide what we want to believe and whether or not we want to keep subscribing to these old belief systems. So a huge part of being the observer is being present. And I understand that if you are just starting to heal, this is incredibly hard to do. It's not something we can easily do consciously. So I have a tip here to help you. The brain flags things. Okay, so if it's identified something, we are more likely to be brought to the present moment in awareness as it sends off a little alert system or signals us. It's like, okay, this thing that we learned, I'm seeing it right here. And it brings us into the present moment. So this is why it's important, like I discussed in my last videos, that you take in content that will allow you to see the distorted thinking patterns that you have. If you have a personality disorder or a diagnosis, there are videos, there is content, there are articles that can help you understand what your problematic thinking patterns are so that you can identify them. Because once the brain knows that there's an issue, it will flag it for you, because 90% of the time we're acting from our subconscious. So it's hard to just bring ourselves present, right? Sure, we have moments where we can do it, but the brain typically will flag it for us and say, hey, that's that thing that we learned about. It's right here. What do you want to do about it? How do you want to perceive this situation? Do you want to change this situation? This will allow us to be more present, but be gentle with yourself, because being present is also a skill that takes time to develop, but it makes it a little bit easier if your brain has something to latch onto to flag for you so that you can become present in those moments. And on my channel, of course, we will be getting into these distorted thinking patterns in depth, answering your questions, which you can leave in the comments down below or put in the Google form that's in the description down below. So once we can be more present and we've been brought into a situation, we can ask ourselves, is this helping me or harming me? Is this something that supports the life I want? Does this seem helpful, but it's actually damaging? And I've run across some of those myself. They seem like they're helping you. Workaholism mentality, that's one of them, and we're definitely going to do a video on that at some point, because it's something that I have struggled with and I am tackling currently as we speak, and it is also hard. Sometimes it requires hard work, and sometimes it requires you to step back and not work so hard, and they're both equally hard. But this is where we can truly start to exert our free will, like we talked about in another video, instead of just running this autopilot pre-installed program that we have. If you can label it, that's great. If you can't label it, that is okay too. It takes time times. Sometimes we have to observe a thought or a feeling many more times than we really want to in order to fully understand it. And that kind of just goes with the spiral staircase we talked about and the side quest we talked about in last video as well. Sometimes it takes time for us to fully understand what we're dealing with and be able to label it and move forward. But if you can label it, such as fear or doubt, you can remind yourself that fear is intense, but it is not truth. It is not a predictor. It is not the end all be all. It is just a feeling. And the thing with feelings is we need to be careful that we don't go, I feel so I know. This is the feeling extrapolating meaning from how you feel, which is based in your old programming and in a very restrictive life from the old programming, onto your life, your current situation, your future, your trajectory. And this is what we do not want. And it will happen sneakily. You might not catch it. This is happening in the subconscious. It can take time for us to recognize that it's happening, and that's okay. You'll become more aware the more you practice this, the more you're present, the more experience you have with reprogramming. Because reprogramming used to be really hard for me, but my brain now has the evidence that it works, so that it's actually become a lot easier. I'm reprogramming some things all the time. I'm still healing. I am still working on this, but I have tested the steps and I have seen the evidence that it works, and my brain now goes, oh, okay, so you're telling me that we're going to take this mindset, but you're not just going to make me get rid of it. You're going to replace it with something that actually helps me and works better. Yeah, because the brain doesn't want to just get rid of it because it's keeping you safe. It might not seem like it's keeping you safe. We'll get into that in a few minutes. It's trying to keep you safe. And so if you just say, I'm going to take this away, it's going to rebel. It's going to kick and scream. It's going to give you all kinds of fears and doubts and all the reasons why you can't do that. But as you learn to trust yourself with this reprogramming process, you say, hey, I'm going to take this, but we're going to meet that same need. We're going to address that same safety issue in a better way that is not restricting and allows us freedom and allows us to expand, because the subconscious programming is extremely restrictive. So let's take self-sabotage as an example. It will utilize confirmation bias. Something bad has happened and now your brain says, see, nothing ever works out for me. See, that's not safe. See, we can never have what we want. It's never going to work out. And I'm going to use this evidence in front of me to prove that that is true, because the brain always looks for evidence that it is accurate. Okay, but remember, bad things, they happen to everybody. But a traumatized brain will use these bad things as a way to reinforce its old programming, keeping us stuck in a very tight cage that will never allow you to live the life that you want to live. This is where it helps us to ask, what kind of meaning might this feeling or thought be extrapolating onto my life? The subconscious, like I said, is a hidden murky place, but it presents itself to us. So when we have a thought or a feeling, we follow it. We get curious about it. We ask ourselves, how might this be represented in my life? How has this held me back? In what areas has it held me back? And we truly just analyze the situation so that we can see all the ways it presents itself in our life. And again, when we can identify something, the brain will start flagging it, bringing us into the present moment. So how would you reprogram a situation like this? Well, we would stop because the brain identified it and brought us present. And we would say, oh, this is self-sabotage and this is confirmation bias. This is directly going to keep me from living the life that I want to live. But knowing why this happens is equally important. We talked before about how your programming is designed to keep you safe, but this doesn't feel very safe, does it? It feels very limiting. But the brain does this in an attempt to control the situation with controlled misery, because misery in itself might not seem safe, but if you're consistently miserable, it's safe because it's consistent. It's not fluctuating up and down. So the brain will do whatever it can to get itself back into equilibrium. And this is where we get things like self-sabotage and confirmation bias. It's just the brain trying to reel us back in, like, you've gone out a little too far, your leash is a little too long. We're going to reel that back in, and we're going to do it with all kinds of negative thoughts and feelings. So let's walk step by step through an example of what it means to be the observer. Let's say that I have decided I'm going to make a choice that is going to change my life for the better. And immediately I'm met with thoughts and feelings about that. The subconscious always has something to say. Okay, things that, like, you can't do that. Things never work out for you. Think about all the times things didn't work out for you in the past. And again, we found out this is to keep us in equilibrium. And I'm going to look at my notes because this part is very important and I want to make sure that I cover it all. Thoughts like it's not realistic, it won't work out, you can't follow through, or maybe just fear, panic, terror. And you allow these thoughts to happen, but you just see them, the thoughts and the feelings. You see them and you're not drowning in them. You are now asking questions, getting curious, so that you can decide if it's something you want to continue, because you are the authority in your life. And I've been learning that this reprogramming thing is all about you taking that authority back from the things that you've learned in your past, from your parents, from your friends, from school, from all the interactions you had in those very impressionable years. And if you want to learn more about that, go back to my first 2 videos. Again, very, very important. But now you can label it as self-sabotage, fear, and doubt, and this will not get rid of them. It won't. Okay. And at first you're still going to be feeling those feelings. Okay. They don't want to move. They don't. They want to keep you safe, but it will take their power. It will break you out of the illusions of the programming. At first, this might be all you can do, and that is okay. Just keep reminding yourself through the storm of thoughts and feelings, this is my old programming. They do not define my life. Fear is a feeling, not a predictor. It does not mean that it's true. And doubts can be proven wrong. And remind yourself that the old programming is designed to keep you trapped forever and never changing. That you can never have the life that you want as long as it's running the show. And now, if you're able to, this is where we'll begin to rewrite. But understand that you have to know the language, much like computer programming, in order to reprogram your mind. So at first, we're learning to identify them, and it may take time. You might be able to rewrite, you might not. You might need to spend a little bit of time observing and identifying your thought patterns. But this is where it's important to consume positive content that will educate you on specific thought patterns that you might be running into. And again, my channel is going to do that, but not until after these first few videos where we discuss the meat of healing. And this requires repetition. You truly, truly believe these things. These are core beliefs, and they're defense mechanisms, safety mechanisms. So it takes repetition over and over and over again. It's just like learning anything else, a new skill, anything that you seek to learn, you're going to have to repeat it over and over again. But when you can identify it, label it to take its power away, then you can start rewriting it with whatever it is that you choose for your life. You didn't consent to your original programming, but you can build a life that you do consent to, one that is supportive and encouraging and peaceful and allows you to expand outside the cage of the old programming. But this is the point where you start to install the new programming that you want to carry forward. These are the 4 steps. Pause. Recognize that you're triggered or have caught a moment of old programming making itself known in the conscious mind. 2. Label the thought, feeling, or distorted thinking pattern. Define, this is number 3, how it is affecting you and your life, and that it is not true and doesn't have to be something you believe anymore. 4. Rewrite. What do you want to believe instead? And how do you want your brain to handle situations like this in the future? This is all the steps of healing. Now, we'll go into more depth next week on the feeling aspect of it, but it's a very similar process. I'm just going to help you understand how to process those feelings. And if you're an analytical and logical thinker, you're going to want to tune in for that one, because I know that can be an area where we struggle. But this is what we call reparenting. You're approaching a situation that you've likely seen before because you're not a toddler or a baby anymore. But reparenting is approaching it as if it's the very first time you're ever seeing it and doing it consciously, being the parent that your inner child always needed, going about the situation in a different way. You don't have to keep running the same program on repeat. You are the authority in your life. And the more that you implement these things, the more confidence and freedom you will feel. I can't even express how much this has changed my life. And I am so glad to be sharing it with you all. But this is what it means to reparent, is to look at a situation as if it's the very first time you've ever been there, like you're a little kid, and parent yourself the way that you should have been parented. And we'll have many examples of that here on the channel. But just allowing yourself to perceive a situation as if it's the very first time objectively. But here I want to touch on something that we briefly discussed last video, but I think I want to expand on it. Here's where it's important that you might want to have therapy or a support system, because you've probably heard that our mind creates our reality. Like, obviously our physical reality is here, but the way that our brain perceives it, that creates how we experience reality. So when you're meddling with these things, you're going in there, you're reprogramming, you might feel like, oh, I guess I could explain it as like, it might feel a bit buggy. Things might be a little bit confusing and you might not fully understand what's going on. And because our minds create our reality, this can lead to some derealization. Okay, I've experienced this, not every time with reprogramming, but on some of the deeper things, I started to question reality because again, our mind creates that reality for us. And as the old programming dies, it kicks and screams. It can be very confusing. And this is where we need to recognize that, one, pat yourself on the back because you're really close to installing the new programming in the area of your life that you've been working on. But two, this is just part of the process. Three, make sure you have your support system and that you are safe. That is top priority. At that point, you just cling to that new programming and eventually you'll come out of it. You just have to keep focusing on the new programming because yeah, it's confusing. The programming is going neck and neck and now they're about equal here and one is trying to get ahead. Now we have conflicting beliefs and we don't know what we believe anymore. That is the death phase and we'll have a whole video on that because I think a lot of people fall back into their old programming during that phase. It is an incredibly hard phase, but the only thing that you need to do during that phase is to keep reiterating the new programming. Don't listen to the old programming. Label it. This is my old programming. You can label exactly what it is if you know, but if you don't, you can label it as this is the old programming. I'm not subscribing to that belief anymore. I'm going to believe my new programming and you will eventually get past it. It can last a few days. It's a bit rough. It's a necessary step for reprogramming, changing how we perceive reality. And sometimes that involves derealizing, maybe even some depersonalization. So make sure that you have a support system so that you can be safe. So what we've discussed is the core of the neural reprogramming. This really does have to be practiced every single day and it has to be done over and over and over and over again in order to take effect, because every time we reinforce the old programming it gets stronger and every time we reinforce the new programming it gets stronger. Sometimes we're going to fall. That is okay. That is a part of the process. It means that we still don't fully understand something, but every time that you can consciously do it, no matter how hard it seems like it's going to be, please take the steps into the new programming because you're solidifying that more and more, and every time you don't, you're solidifying the old programming more and more. So this is backed in neuroscience. Healing doesn't have to be convoluted. It's actually pretty simple. It just requires dedication and the ability to see yourself clearly without judgment. And that's another thing we really need to talk about is judgment is the biggest thing that can affect your healing journey and stop it in its tracks. Your programming is not an indicator of who you are. It was what you were taught by people who were taught that from someone else. If you tried to trace it back, you would not be able to find an origin. It is generic. It is not truth. It does not mean anything about you. And the thing is if you can see it without judging yourself, you can actually change it. If we are judging ourselves, we will not change. We will find reasons why it's not true. We will find justifications. The brain, the subconscious will do its thing because it believes that it's bad if it admits to these things. But the only way you can change it and be the person you want to be, not the one you were taught to be, is by releasing judgment. And if you're running into a moment where you are feeling bad about yourself or judging yourself, understand that you have now spotted old programming. Old programming is the only thing that seeks to make meaning out of a situation, extrapolate meaning onto you or your future. So you are touching old programming whenever you find yourself there. And that alone tells you that it is not valid. It is not accurate. It is a distortion. This is one way that you can help identify when you're running into old programming. And remember, when we can identify it, the brain will start flagging it. So to recap, being the observer just means to think about how you think, to decide, do I want to believe this anymore? Does this align with the life that I want? And to give ourselves the authority back in our lives to choose something different that's more in alignment with us and our true, authentic self. It is a way that we free ourselves from the constraints. If there is any part of your life that you do not like, you find yourself there and you're like, man, this does not feel good, you can change it. I have been changing so many things in my life and allowing myself to have a much freer existence where there doesn't have to be all this negativity and judging myself and having these expectations of myself that actually make it hard to even take a step forward. And I'm going to be teaching you guys all of this on this channel, and I'm excited to get there. We still have another couple of videos that are going to be the basics of healing, but then we're going to be diving into specifics. And I've been through a lot and had a lot of trauma that I can really help you guys to spot these mindsets. And I can help you even more if you drop your comment down below or go to the Google form and let me know what you want to hear about next. And remember, once you have installed your new programming, it's going to be effortless to get the life that you want. Of course, it's still going to require that you take the steps, but those steps will feel more effortless. Just like the old programming ran autopilot effortlessly, that's how your life can move towards the direction that you want once this programming is installed. I want to touch on something else here too. The more traumatized you are, you actually have more opportunities throughout your day to heal. Like I said, I had BPD. I had problematic thinking all day long, every day, in every situation I found myself in. I'm not joking. Everything I faced in a distorted way. I perceived it in a distorted way. And what I learned is neuroplasticity and reprogramming is how people implement new habits. And that's why they say 28 to 60 days to implement a new habit. And that's when you're only doing it once a day. Like if you want to implement journaling or going to the gym or whatever, you only get an opportunity to do that like once a day. When you're reprogramming a whole distorted thinking pattern, oh baby, you get many times a day to address this situation. And this is why I've seen change rapidly, because my thought patterns all day long were distorted. So I had many opportunities and therefore I saw rapid healing. So don't be discouraged if you have been diagnosed with a disorder that seems really hard. This means that you get more opportunities to heal every single day and change those mindsets, and you can actually see the change more rapidly because you're having to do it many more times a day than the average person. So just keep that in mind. It's just a little bit of encouragement I wanted to throw out there for those of us who have disorders that people think can't be healed, which we know how I feel about that. But next week, we're going to dive into what it means to feel your feelings and process those feelings. Because if you're like me and are analytical, that is a foreign concept. And it was something I truly had to learn and really fully break down to understand. So we're going to go into great depth about that. And I cannot wait to see you guys again next week. I hope you guys are having a great week. And this week, try to see what you can observe. That's your homework for this week. Try to see what you can observe in your life that is made known to you consciously, because this is an area to start. We're not made consciously aware of something until we are ready to tackle it. So if there's an area of your life that you already know and your brain already signals to you, try rewriting it this week. I know we haven't gotten into specifics that you can rewrite yet, and we will be doing that on this channel, but see if you can change it to what you want to believe. And that's it, and I'll talk to you guys later.